Hello everyone and welcome back to the Great Book of Grudges. My name is Nathan and we're back with another Total War Warhammer video. So Creative Assembly have just literally dropped a new blog post focusing around battle types, changes and new additions. There's a lot to discuss here, so we're going to go over each individual section. As always, Creative Assembly have provided this blog a little earlier so we can record a little sooner. I do apologize, however, if you do hear any construction going on. It should be minimal, but unfortunately we received all the information a bit out of the blue and my neighbors are doing construction in their houses. Unfortunately, it might just shine through every now and then, I'm not too sure. However, before we move on to all the specific sections, we do have some interesting information already here, where they said that we will get some information regarding minor settlements and siege battles at a later date, including other exciting additions and changes. Nice of them to let us know that, though I do hope that we're not going to wait too long for stuff about minor settlements and sieges, because that's something that we've all been really waiting for. But let's not waste any more time now and jump into the specific sections. First up, we have standard battles. There's a bunch of different subsections to this too, but they do mention that there are going to be overall balancing changes and other back-end updates that will make things run smoother and result in less bugs. I really hope so, because some bugs can be a bit of an issue in Total War. So let's cover the in-battle resources section. So they state here that races such as the Dark Elf, Greenskin and Tomb Kings had their stuff being very hard-coded. This was the first implementation of a in-battle currency, which I guess everyone had pretty much the same thing in all honesty. But apparently because they were hard-coded systems, it was tough for them to introduce a new version for this, meaning that everything, of course, like for the three races we already mentioned, had very similar systems. I'm not too sure if this means that they might have different systems implemented for further races in the future, or similar ones implemented for all races at one point or another, though it is really nice to know that this has also been made more accessible, meaning that modders will be able to take full advantage of this and be able to implement it for factions if they so please. This is a fantastic feature for modders to be able to experiment, so honestly I can't praise Creative Assembly enough for this, as of course this is going to open up so many doors for modders. I already know a few who are likely going to use this as much as they can. Next we'll move on to ability improvements and quality of life changes, which is quite important for Warhammer 3. They mention here that they've overhauled a decent amount of back-end code and tweaked a lot of minor systems to improve gameplay and balancing. Okay, super cool. There were a decent amount of glaring issues when it came to Warhammer 1 and Warhammer 2, so if they're going to start looking towards that, that's going to be great. There's a mention at looking over every spell that they've got in-game, and allowing them to rework how the system works, even going as to mention that Catarine's Heart of Winter spell is a 4-phase direct damage ability, meaning that there is more to come from spells, and it's likely that future spells being implemented into the game, and hopefully a bunch of ones that were already implemented in previous content, will get a quite hefty overhaul. They mention a lot of changes like resistance, knockbacks, healing, that should all function a bit better now too, and they say it's not a major upgrade, but it's something which is a quality of life change. That's all well and good. I do wish that they went into more specifics about stuff, but I'm assuming that since it's still very early into the game, that they're probably just drip feeding information at the moment until gameplay can be shown off, and I understand that, but some more information would help out. Now we can start looking towards single entity wounds and unit size scaling. Okay, this should be fairly interesting. The single entity wounds we don't really have to discuss much, we've covered this very heavily on the channel, but essentially what this means is that single entities, big monsters, dragons and so on, even legendary lords, will have this new wound system, where if they take a certain amount of damage, they will receive a debuff, meaning that of course they won't be as strong in regards to this. Now you can heal them up, which is perfectly fine, but until they're healed up to a certain degree, they will have some negative effects. The most important thing about this is that unit scaling balance is finally coming into effect. Before this, unit sizes didn't really mean much, as spells would do the same amount of damage, cannons would do the same amount of damage, and so on and so forth. It was really weird because sometimes you might want to use smaller unit sizes. This could be for a multitude of reasons. Perhaps your PC can't handle so many entities, or you just don't want to deal with so many models on the field. It's very much up to the player at this point. However, when it came to how it works right now, sometimes some spells would do much more damage to smaller unit sizes than they would to, say, those in larger ones. If this is getting updated, that's absolutely fantastic, because it brings such a massive quality of life change. So far we're seeing quite a few mentions of a lot of quality of life updates, and I hope all these pan out. It just looks very, very promising. Now for the really juicy stuff, the subsection of new maps, areas, and art. So they've said here that, of course, with the fact that we're going into the vast stretches of the Chaos Wastes, we're going to get a whole new part of the world, which means new maps, new art, and new areas, and new types of terrain. They mentioned that compared to what they've had in the past, they've had a lot more freedom now, and that makes sense. You're going in the realms of chaos, and it doesn't generally follow the same laws of physics or in general reality as it does in the Warhammer Fantasy world. So here the artist can go completely all out. Let's hope that we get some cool terrain from this. We've already seen some stuff in regards to Khorne, and hopefully this means that we'll see some really cool stuff in regards to the other Chaos Gods. This next quote is fairly interesting. Map-wise, we've kept some of the old maps. Land battle wise, it's roughly the same. There might be some more hard collision than there was before because the new terrain types are quite hostile, and there's a lot more height variation. Okay, so a lot of the old maps are probably staying the same. It makes sense as there's a decent number of them, but we're also going to get some new ones. Hopefully this means that we won't get the same map reskinned over and over and over again. That was one of my biggest issues when it came to Total War Warhammer, but if they're going to start adding some more variation, that would be awesome. This strikes out to me a lot though. The new terrain types are quite hostile. Does this mean that we're going to get something along the lines of magical terrain from Warhammer Fantasy, or they've got some other stuff planned out, or it's just purely visual? Some clarification would be nice, but again, it's still pretty early on, so we're gonna have to wait. Now in regards to the next quote, this one's also quite interesting. There have been improvements and changes to battle modes. On choke points there was only ever a maximum of 2 crossings before. It goes up to 3 or 4 now. Cool, so that means that you're going to have to strategize more, especially during choke points. This, in theory, should help the AI not just focus into one specific point and you can just have all your forces waiting there and just have a massive mosh pit. But let's continue. Ambush battles now have the withdrawal feature from Free Kingdoms, where if you get your units to the withdrawal point in an ambush battle, you can escape so you're not just instantly killed. That's absolutely fantastic. It's one of Free Kingdoms' best features. Hopefully this means that they'll take more inspiration from Free Kingdoms, as there are so many good features there that should really be in Warhammer 3 and, in all honesty, future Total War titles too. Let's move on now to Autoresolve changes. Big quality of life changes are coming to Autoresolve. The most notable is that the game will now tell you the predicted result and which units will be lost before hitting the button, as well as in general how many casualties you will be taking. Okay, this is actually quite cool because then you'll be able to see if it's worth either auto-resolving properly and potentially losing your artillery or anything else, or just getting into the battle and just play generally. They even state here that they've been able to work around the auto-resolve system and it should be cleaner across the board, and we should have less random units that are completely skew from the auto-resolve. If this actually does end up working out as they say it does, this should be a massive change to future campaigns. I can't wait to see this in action, but I'm assuming we're going to have to wait a little bit of time until gameplay is shown off. Next we have some new info overlay options. There's not a lot to cover here, but again they mentioned that they're taking a lot of stuff from Free Kingdoms, which is going to be absolutely fantastic. Again, I can't praise this decision enough. I just really hope that we end up getting something along the lines of Free Kingdom's diplomacy system because it's the best we've ever had. Okay, next we have a smaller section, but a really curious one. This is revolving around quest battles. Let's read the whole thing as there's a few things to discuss about it. For when you just have to get the latest snazzy sword or particularly fancy hat for your legendary lord, or on other special occasions, quest battles are still here and still great. If you're picturing what you saw in Warhammer 2, you've got the right idea. I'm assuming they mean later Warhammer 2 stuff where quest battles were finally made into something really interesting and enjoyable for the fanbase. Stuff like what we had for Bertsche or even the Sisters of Twilight, those were really thematic quest battles which just were so enjoyable. But let's continue. Bigger, better, more interesting designs, and with several survival battles taking place of what would have been story battles in the past, but overall the same theme. Oh, okay, so survival battles could also potentially show up in the form of quest battles too. This might be fairly interesting. We're going to have to wait and see how it gets implemented. I mean, the survival battle for Kislev, which influencers such as myself managed to play, was fairly long. I'm not saying that's a bad thing if it's going to be for a quite powerful item, but maybe in a smaller scale would be nice. I'm assuming a lot of factors will come into play here, and it wouldn't be so difficult to do a survival battle in campaign, especially after a certain point when you're running doom stacks and so on. But again, we're going to have to wait. I'm really curious about this. If they're going to make quest battles more thematic, I am so in for this. Next is a few rather lengthy sections regarding survival battles. There's a lot to discuss here. The main section on screen right now we've discussed in the past, as obviously I was able to do so when I had played the battle and then obviously hit the embargoes. One specific point is that every faction will have access to every survival battle. Of course, this makes sense for Skarbrand, as he will eventually wage war against Khorne. The demon himself is devoid of any personality, so he doesn't really know what he's doing at most points. But I don't know how this would work for other demons. Say for example, if we end up getting Nikari or Korgarth Plaguefather, they're ultimately loyal to their patron deity, so it makes no sense for them to be able to do so. I'm assuming that we will get clarification regarding this in future drops of information, but until then, I'm left a little bit confused. Another interesting thing to note here is that apparently the access that you get to your reinforcements is determined to how far you've pushed into the Chaos Realm itself, meaning that the further you've progressed, the more types of units that you'll have access to. That's a pretty cool feature, and we're going to have to see how that works. So I'm assuming if we get rid of Khorne and we've taken a lot of his territories, now we get access to more higher tier units? Or will we have access to much larger recruitment pools? Because everything was kind of limited as far as I saw. We're going to have to wait and see again, but it shows a bit of potential. It's fairly thematic, that's for sure. You'll have more access to stuff as you're doing more and more damage within the realms of chaos themselves, proving yourself to be a formidable power. More information is then provided in the reinforcement section, but it's stuff that we've already all covered before. Replenishment is possible in regards to survival battles. We of course know this. What we know now is that it's focused around what specific unit it is. So basically how it works is that it's going to cost more supplies to be able to replenish ammunition or health or something like that if it's for a higher tier unit than it is for a lower one, which of course makes perfect sense, and it's to make sure that you're not just keeping and hoarding all your supplies. You're going to have to plan ahead and see which unit you rather spend it on, which I think works rather well. This is further reinforced when we get to the upgrade section too, as we know that we're able to upgrade units, and it would depend again on what tier unit there is, if it's going to cost more or less. There are 3 tiers of upgrades that you can give to each of your individual units, and then there's also different types of upgrades for armor, weapons, shields, and missiles. They also fully expect for everyone not to be able to upgrade all of their units to tier 3 with all the available upgrades for that respective unit, as of course you're going to be spending these resources on not just upgrades. Buildings are also a topic that they hit upon here, and most of the stuff we've already discussed in length, though there is something here of note. The quote goes as follows: "The massive difference between this and previous custom-built defenses in prior Total War games is that now you're given more placement options, the ability to construct these outside of the deployment phase. Multiple type options, and if you want to dismantle them to retain some resources you can," which is all really well done. We've already discussed this in length, but the main thing to take from this is that they're working on mechanics that they've not been able to do before, or expanding on mechanics which existed but in such a drastic change. Here's hoping that this mechanic, or at least something very similar to it, is available in future siege battles too, as we know that we're going to get a siege rework in the future. Something like this would be absolutely phenomenal. And lastly, some very big news regarding co-op and custom battles. Okay, so let's just read the quote directly. Finally, we're letting you play the survival battles outside the campaign. This allows them to be undertaken in up to 4-player co-op, with different factions if you wish. One to conquer the realm of Khorne with an army of your 3 best friends and every demon faction, you can do that. Once the combined map for all 3 games is available, you'll also be able to bring every faction in the game into survival battles to see how the Empire, Greenskins, Lizardmen, or anyone else matches up against the Chaos Gods. We're also introducing new systems to transfer control of units in multiplayer battles when a player disconnects, meaning you aren't left with a cut down force if your friend's internet goes out. Well, first off, with regards to the survival battles, that's super cool. That would be so interesting to see a proper, like, end time scenario if you want to roleplay it, where you and 3 other friends could play respective factions and take over the realms of chaos in a sense. Yes, this isn't taking part in a campaign, but rather outside. Yeah, it's still pretty cool, and if you have difficulty modifiers and so on, that would be really interesting. I can't wait to see how this works with terms of summoning units and so on, building up buildings, because obviously here it's not 1 player, but up to 4. I'm really curious about this, and I can't wait to play this with some friends. The changes to multiplayer there are also very welcome. Everything sounds really good. I can't wait to see what else comes from this. We're gonna have to wait, of course. We obviously do know that we are going to get some information eventually, they say soon enough, with details on siege improvements and minor settlement battles, and I hope it doesn't take too long, because if everything is sounding really good here, I can't wait till we start finding out about features we've been waiting for a long time. What do you guys think about everything said so far? It looks like Creative Assembly are really trying to make Total War Warhammer 3 one of their best titles ever. It all sounds very promising. I can't wait till we start seeing some actual gameplay for this, or, you know, influencers such as myself can start actually being able to play and cover it, as there's a lot of things I want to see for myself. It's looking rather promising, but we're gonna have to wait, I guess, which I'm not keen on waiting too much, in all honesty. I just want to play, and I know a lot of you just want to play now too. But let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and let's start a bit of a discussion. But with that, my friends, we've come to the end of our video. Thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy the video, might I suggest giving the video a like, or even subscribing to the channel, as it really does help us out. In the description section below are various links to different social media platforms such as Facebook, Instagram, and Discord. Also in the description section is an affiliate link with Element Games where you could buy loads of hobby-based products, not just Warhammer, for 10 to 25% off. Making a purchase using that link and also our special code, which is also in the description, supports the channel at no extra cost to you, which we think is rather cool. A big thank you to our patrons. Your support means the world to us. It's amazing that people want to help a small channel like us grow and get to a higher level of content. A big thank you to Gibraltar LUSC, Ryan Bertsche, Andrew Prince, and Okro for subscribing to us at our Fane level. You guys are super cool. And a big thank you to Edward Yule, VS Vasan, Aaron Whitman, and Shaggy for subscribing to us at our King level. Honestly, we can't thank you all enough. And lastly, a big thank you to all of you for liking, sharing, and commenting on these videos. Honestly, it's because of you guys that the channel has been growing at such a great pace lately, so we can't thank you all enough. But with that, my friends, thank you so much for watching once again, and we shall see you all again very soon. Have a good day.